Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to install a Tusk Chase Light Bar on your side-by-side. This is a universal install and it's going to help improve your safety while you're off-roading, especially in those dusty or low light conditions. You've got 8 different strobe patterns for that amber light, and you can actually integrate this into your brake lights, reverse light, and your turn signals. Now, with that being said, it comes with all of the necessary mounting hardware as well as your wiring. It's pretty simple to install, so let's go ahead and get started. So right here we have our Tusk Chase Light Bar. This is going to come with all the necessary wiring and even an extension for the 4-seaters. It also comes with 2 different mounting options. Keep in mind this is a universal install, so the installation is going to look a little bit different from one machine to another. You're going to have to find out what works best for you. But a common place to mount this up is at the back of your roof. You just want to make sure you're not adding too much height to your machine, and you want to make sure this still fits inside your trailer. So with that being said, on the back we have the slide mounts. So these are going to go to a flat mounting surface. They've got a little rubber grommet at the bottom and the hardware you need to get this mounted up. And then right in the back, if I loosen this bolt, this mount is actually on an arc. So you can get the angle that you want, and it has teeth to lock it in place. And then you can slide this from side to side to the best mounting location, then tighten that down. For us, we're going to be going with the side mounts. So with these, again, comes with the mounting hardware for the bottom and on the side. But for our machine, our roof has a rain gutter at the bottom. So for us, we did source some additional hardware. We're going to be using a couple 13mm spacers and then just a longer bolt and nylock nut. But most of the time, you're just going to use the hardware that comes in the kit with those mounts. Now, if the Chase Light Bar adds too much height to the back of your machine, another option is to get some Tusk horizontal flag mounts, and they can go to your roll cage, or if you have a spare tire carrier, you can put these across that bar going across the back, and it's going to give you a great mounting location. To get this mounted up, I'm going to set this on the back of the roof where I want to install it, and I've got both brackets finger tight to where there's no free play in them, so they're squared up. And then I'm just going to use a tape measure on each side from the edge of the roof, and we're going to center it up so we have the same measurement on each side. We'll mark that mounting location with a Sharpie, and then we'll use a centering punch to mark the location where we're going to drill. Now, to drill these out, I've loosened up the roof mounting hardware. I don't want to hit anything on the back side, so what I'm doing is lifting up the roof. Got a block of wood underneath there. Then I'm using my 21/64 inch drill bit. And one more little tip to make sure the drill bit doesn't go too far down is you can get a deep socket, slide that on there, and that's going to only allow it to go that little distance. And with those drilled out, we can go ahead and install our hardware. So we've got the button head bolt coming up through the bottom, our spacer. Going to set the light bar in place, go through that bracket, and then we've got our nylock nut on top. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. This is the moment of truth. Hopefully you drilled in the right spots. Looks like we got lucky. And then from here, I can tighten this hardware down. Then I'll separate the connectors on these 2 wires so I can run them into the cab through the small opening next to our rear window. Now the switch is too wide for the opening, so with it in the cab, we can then poke the wire back through the opening and make our connection. Then we can remove the wooden blocks and reinstall the roof hardware. Now I'm going to level out the chase light and tighten down the side bolts. The next 2 things you want to plan out are where you're going to get your power source from. So you can go directly to a battery, but we do recommend using key on power. So most machines, they're gonna have a bus bar or an accessory power panel. With that, we've got one underneath the dash right here. A lot of the Polaris machines, they're gonna have the same thing. It could be either inside the cab underneath the dash or underneath the hood. And then on the Can-Ams, a lot of times that's gonna be on the passenger side center console underneath one of the panels. Now for the rocker switch, you wanna choose a mounting location for that. And usually you're just gonna use a pop-out plug mounting location that's already existing in the dash, but if you need to cut out a mounting location for this, you can. After that, all these 4 wires, they're optional. You don't have to use them. You can just plug this up with connecting this to power and put the switch in, run the wires back to the light bar, and it's gonna work great. But if you wanna integrate turn signals, brake lights, or even a reverse light into this, you have the option to do that, and we are going to cover that today. At this point, we need to gain access to all of the areas we're going to route our wires. So we're going to run these through that center console. There's going to be an existing wiring harness in there. That's usually a safe place to run this along. And just keep in mind, you want to avoid any rotating parts or pinch points or anything that could damage these wires. Now, we're also going to be running these up to the dash, so we're going to have a couple panels up in there. And all you have to do is connect a power and ground wire and then put this switch in the dash. But again, we might have to remove some additional body panels to take advantage of some of these other features when we route these wires. So now that we have the center console and body panels removed, we can go ahead and route our wiring. Again, it's going to look a little different from machine to machine, but we're just coming down this roll cage, coming across and following that existing wiring, making sure we avoid any pinch points or rotating parts. If you have a 4-seater, you might need to use the wire extender for the rocker harness to get all the way to the dash. Now these connections are keyed, so make sure you line up the arrows when making your connections. And then we're going to run both of these wires the rest of the way through that tunnel. We're going to have them come out by the dash. The next step is to go up to the dash and cut out the mounting location for your rocker switch or rocker switches. We're using a switch for the reverse light, and this is going to be the easiest option for most people on most machines. You can run that reverse light into existing wiring, but it becomes more complicated because usually that's a low voltage system. So again, this is the route we're going. We've got our mounting locations right here. We're going to drill them out and then use a hot razor blade. Alternately, you could use a Dremel tool to trim that plastic out. Now, one thing I want to mention, if you need to cut these out like we do, you can use your calipers and measure 0.85 inches across, and then the height is going to be 1.43 inches. That way, if you're going into somewhere that doesn't have a template like ours does, you're going to be able to get it done. Like we mentioned before, you always want to pay attention to anything that's behind here. So we do have a sound reducing mat that we had to pull back just a little bit to make these cutouts work. They're kind of rough right now. We can clean them up with a little file or sandpaper. Then we're going to take one of the switches, just make sure that it fits in and still has some resistance towards the end where these tabs hold it in place. So we're looking good on both holes, so we can continue with wiring. Next, we have a couple wires coming from our switch. So these 2 wires, they're going to be routed up to our bus bar, and then this wire, these are going to be ran down to that connector where we previously attached that extension. Then we'll make our connection. Now for us, again, we're tying our power into the bus bar. So on our machine, this middle terminal, if you have a constant power, that's going to be in the middle. The key on power is going to be on the left side and the ground on the right. Now every machine can be different, so it's a good idea to verify power with a test light. Or if you don't have one of these, you could tie into an accessory socket or something like that and just test for power with this test light. So we're going to ground it out and hold it to that key on power position and turn our key on. The test light lit up, so we know we're good. Now before we connect to power, even though it's going to be key on power, we're still going to disconnect our negative battery terminal, and that way we don't create any sparks and don't blow any fuses. The next step is to connect our red wire to key on power and the black wire to ground. And then when you tighten these posts, be really careful not to over tighten them because they're easy to strip out. Now for the accessory wires, I'm just going to go over these colors real quick. So this green wire, that's going to be for the brake lights. Black is reverse. You've got the blue wire, that is the bare side turn signal. So the side of your chase light that does not have wires going into it, that's going to correspond to that side of it, since you can have it flipped on either side of the machine. The brown wire is going to be the wire side turn signal, so where these wires go into that chase light. Now I'm going to start with this reverse light. I'm going to wire that up. So we're going to get power from our bus bar. So going to the key on power, we're going to put an eyelet on a wire and route it down to that switch cutout that we just had. And then we're also going to put a connector on this wire and connect all that in. Now, one thing with this, we're going to have to split this cover over these wires since each of these are going to go their own separate ways. Now for the reverse rocker switch, we need to run a key on power wire and a ground wire to it from the bus bar. So we're going to use some 16 gauge wire. We're going to install an eyelet on each one of these and then connect them to the bus bar. We'll route those wires down to our rocker switch and install 2 spade connectors. Now for the black wire, I'm going to route this to the switch mount area. And with this being a thinner wire, I'm just folding the end of it over. We're going to put that into our connector and crimp it. The next step is to wire up our switch. And on the back side, we've got numbers for each of these terminals right here. So we're going to start with terminal number 8. We're going to put a ground wire there. You can put this on number 7, and I'll tell you what that does in a second. Terminal 2, that's going to be our key on power, that big red wire. And this ground one's the bigger black wire. The thin black wire, again, is that reverse light. And we're going to connect that into terminal number 3. So everything's going to work just like this. And if that's how you wire it, there's going to be no LED on the bottom. And then when you flip this up, that top LED is going to light up. If you want an LED to be on the bottom all the time, what you're going to do is run another ground wire. You're going to splice into this one on terminal 8 and run it to terminal 7. And then you're going to splice a wire going from the key on power to terminal number 6. So that's how you splice these in. I know a lot of people don't like these splice connectors as much, and if you do choose to solder these wires together, that's going to be your best option. Now we're going to move on to the turn signal wires. So that's going to be the brown and blue wires. We're going to route those up into the dash. And on our machine, these are pretty easy to route, but if you have hard to reach places, you can use welding wire or something like that to help fish them through. And then we're just going to route these towards our turn signal wires. So it could be different for every machine, but if you have a Tusk signal and horn kit, usually you're going to have 3 wiring looms that go through the front of your dash. So with these wiring looms, 2 of them are slightly bigger then the third one. Third one's going to be the horn wires. There's only 2 wires in there. These others have 3. I'm going to tie into these right here. I'm just going to cut that sheath open just a little bit and be really careful that you don't damage any wires when you do that. So on this one, you can see we have access to that yellow wire. So on this, the Tusk signal and horn kit, the yellow wire is going to be for the left turn signal, and you're going to have a green wire on the other loom, and that's going to be for the right turn signal. Now to tie into these wires, you can use a wire tap like we did on the switch, or like us, we're going to solder into these. It's going to be a little better connection. So to do that, I'm going to use my wire strippers. We're going to cut the insulation. This is 14 gauge wire, but make sure you either know what gauge you're dealing with or start with one of these bigger sizes and work your way down so you don't cut the wires inside. So I'm just going to go right in the middle of my green wire. I'm going to clamp the tool down and rock it back and forth. It's going to cut that insulation. Then pull the protective cover back. Alternately, you can cut this in half and twist all 3 wire ends together and solder them. So now that we have some wire exposed, what we're going to do is tin our soldering iron. So just get a little solder on the tip, and we're going to tin this wire. Now for the turn signal wires, again, it's the brown and blue wires, and these correlate to how the Chase Light Bar is mounted up. So the side of the Chase Light Bar that has the wires going into it, that's going to be this brown wire. So on our machine, this is the right wire. I'm going to go ahead and route this up. And again, on our machine, right turn signal has the green wire. So I'm going to tin this one as well and then solder these together. Now I'm going to pull on the wire, make sure it's on there good, which ours is. So that's how you do the solder method. Again, if you want to use a wire tap, you can go ahead and do that. Now we're just going to use electrical tape to cover that up. When you're doing it like this, little tape ball is going to be your best friend. And now for the blue wire, this goes to the bare side of the Chase Light Bar. So in our case, the left side. So I'm going to go ahead and route that to our yellow turn signal wire, and we're going to do the same steps. And anytime I use electrical tape, on the very last wind I put a little zip tie. That's because when it gets hot outside, the electrical tape, sometimes it'll want to unwind, so that's going to prevent that. Now for the green wire, this is your brake light, and if you want, you can use this power plug. This is going to connect to your tail light. If there's one available for your machine, you can run this wire all the way to the back, tie into it. For us, since we have all of these wires at the dash already, I'm going to tie into the brake light switch up here. It's going to be a little bit easier, but in either case, you want to use a test light and verify that you're tying in to the brake light. Now for our brake light, we just located the brake light switch. Now I've gone ahead and removed some dash panels out of the way just so you guys can see this. You don't have to remove all that stuff, but we just followed these wires right up to the connector. And now I've got some safety wire right here. I'm going to back probe both wires. You can use a little silicone spray. It's going to help these back probes go in just a little bit easier. And all we're doing is that wire is going to touch the metal connector inside. And now we can turn the key on. I'm going to touch each of these wires. So this one has power already, so we do not want to connect to the blue one. What should happen when we press the brake, that wire, the switch is going to complete the circuit, so we're sending power back down that brown wire right there. So this is the one we want to tie into. And again, you can either solder or use a wire tap. Now I'm going to route the green wire over to that location and make the connection. Key on, we've got the blue light on bottom, and we've got the blue light when the reverse light is on. Now that we have everything wired up, we can go ahead and test all of the functions on these switches and make sure our Chase Light Bar is working correctly. And that way, if something is not correct, you can fix it before you reinstall all of your body panels. Next, I'm going to reconnect the negative battery terminal. So with the battery hooked up, we're going to turn the key on. We're going to start with the main switch. So with this in the up position, the Chase Light Bar is going to be off. If we turn this to the middle position, the Chase Light Bar is going to be on, and that's going to be the 2 red lights to start out with. If you want to use the yellow lights, you're going to hold this down for 3 seconds. They're going to pop on. And there's 8 different modes with that. And this is automatically going to return to the mode you had it in the last time it was on. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle through those. And then if you want the yellow lights off, again, just hold that down. Now after we've checked that switch, we're going to check the other functions. So we've got that bed light or reverse light. I'm going to flip that up. That's working good. Check the turn signals. And then we'll check the brake light. Now that we've verified that everything works, we're going to go back through and use some zip ties to tie down all of the wiring. Then we can reassemble our dash, install the center console and our seats. So with this switch all the way up is off, I'm going to flip this switch over so off is up as well. And that way when we want to turn them on, down is on for both. That's how you install your Tusk Chase Light Bar. If you have any questions, leave those down in the comments. And if you need to pick one of these up or any other accessories for your side-by-side, you can find them on our website. Just click the link in the description below. We offer free shipping on orders over $75. So take advantage of that. And if you want to see more helpful content like this, subscribe to our channel. I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Thanks for watching.